Remember, everyone, Curt Hennig was the greatest wrestler to ever live because nobody beats Mr. Perfect. Nobody. All right, everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Curt Hennig Was the Best, Changed My Mind. Today on our Perfect Podcast, we're going to take a few minutes and remember the late and great Curt Hennig, who would have turned 65 today. I am also working on Curt's 1993 Loser Leave Town match with Ric Flair. That is up and coming, so please bear with me. But today is all about the question of how Curt's career made your love of wrestling grow stronger, or did he get you into wrestling? Before we start, you can find this podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. If you would like to donate to keep the show, you can donate to me over PayPal. You can please contact me at mrperfectisperfect0328@gmail.com to get my handle for PayPal. All right, and we are back from our intro. I'd just like to take a few minutes to say I'm sorry for the long being away for so long. I have been very busy with my 6-year-old, and I've just been working crazy hours. But enough about me. Let's talk about the man of the hour, who is, of course, Curt Hennig, the greatest wrestler to ever live. This episode is just going to be the fact that Curt's birthday is on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 28th of March. He would have been 65 years old. And really, I want us to focus on the fact that if Curt was still around, what do you think he would be doing? Do you think he would still be trying to get into wrestling? Maybe, with Joe. I could see him maybe general manager even, at some point. I definitely, could see him in some kind of maybe commentary, cause I know he'd still be trying to work out. I would think if we were friends, he probably would still be working out because he kind of made that his legacy. As a Hennig, he would say on interviews, that's kind of like the Hennig thing to do, just work out and stuff. So, I'm very excited to welcome all of you from all over the world, even from Russia, from Spain, and Bulgaria, the UK. Shout out to my UK people. Shout out to the people in Texas and also in Germany. I've been getting a lot of Germany hits. Welcome. I do know a little bit of German, so, I had 4 years of it in high school. So, hallo, wie geht's? But mainly today we are going to focus on the late great Curt Hennig. So if I ask you the question is, of course, how did Curt make wrestling to you personal? If you were a fan of Curt Hennig, how did he make it better for you to believe in what he was trying to tell you, the story he was trying to tell? For me, it would be, and I've done, extensive watching of his first WWF days. I believe he had a lot of dark matches, which is why you don't really see him in the WWF until, they said he came in the springtime, but I've only been able to see him as of September 1988. I was already 2 years old by then. I'm sure a lot of the older folks were a little older than that. So, I didn't know a lot about the WWF until, I was about 4 years old, sitting in my aunt's house, just about to turn 5 years old. And I remember watching WrestleMania 7. So anyway, how I would answer the question of how did Curt make me see wrestling? How did it fuel my love for wrestling as a fan? I love watching Curt's matches because he did have that dramatic way of taking a bump, as they would say in the wrestling business, and keeping kayfabe. Even when I saw him do the old Regis and Kathy Lee show back in 1990, I believe it was 1990, it was 1990, it had to be 1990 because Lanny was with him. So Lanny Poffo, who recently passed away, I do want to say a brief moment to Lanny. So I'm just going to pause for a moment. I'll come on back, and we're going to talk about the late and great Lanny Poffo. Okay, and we're back. So the late great Lanny Poffo, who was, yes, Curt's manager in the WWF, he was there in 1989 and stayed with him till about July, August of 1990, because when you see him again at SummerSlam 1990, he's with Bobby Heenan. But let's talk about the late, great Lanny Poffo, because I heard of his passing, and I was very torn. I don't know how to feel about Lanny. Lanny was kind of, Lanny. Whenever I watch older episodes where he is Curt's manager, I'm just kind of like, shh, be quiet, Lanny. The adults are talking. But I think, like, I could see myself being, like, the retorting to anything he would say. You know, he was the genius, and he did come in as Leaping Lanny Poffo. I just really think that he got the raw end of the stick. And that's kind of why they put him with Curt, because he was wrestling, and then he was a manager, and then he was just a full-on manager. I really think that maybe at that time, they kind of gave Lanny the shaft because he wasn't Randy. He wasn't Randy Savage, his brother. But I think Lanny really looked up to Randy. And even if Lanny didn't have that success that Randy had, I really think that, Lanny could have been something worth maybe Intercontinental Champion, but I don't think Lanny even got anywhere close to those kind of belts. I think it was kind of like they were going to do a run with Curt, and it seemed like they were going to give Curt like against Hogan, because he kept, in 89, he kept saying, you can't do that, Hulk Hogan. And Lanny was, of course, with him. So I kind of think that they played off of each other. The one question I would ask Curt today is, who was a better manager, Bobby Heenan or Lanny? He probably would say Bobby Heenan, because Bobby Heenan, as Jim Cornette says on his podcast, kudos to Brian Last. I hope you get well soon. Jim Cornette had said that Bobby was like, if you were a heel and you had made it as a heel, Bobby was your manager, that you were the top heel. And I just think that is so true, because, you had Ravishing Rick Rude, you had Andre the Giant. Now, if you watch older prime times, Gorilla Monsoon would make the comment, well, those are has-beens. Why don't you actually do some real talent like Mr. Perfect, like Terry Taylor, or something like that? I just think that a lot of Andre's stuff is, he was a heel. The same with Haku. Ravishing Rick Rude was a real top heel. I honestly think Curt was a top heel, and that's why they got him and Bobby together later. Because they did so well together, and then, of course, in 93, they did some stuff apart. And then it just made it all the sweeter when you had Bobby Heenan saying, oh, Curt's a turncoat, Mr. Perfect's a turncoat. I don't like Mr. Perfect anymore. When, of course, they turned Curt into a babyface in 92. Like I said, we watched along with that, and that it pumps you up. I mean, I'm sure it pumped Curt up too. He would say, you know, it was a dramatic scene or dramatic time because it was like, you know, I'm back and there's nothing you're going to do about it, you know. I would love to know Curt's feelings on the whole babyface turn and kind of what he was thinking. But going back to Lanny, I'm very sorry to hear of his passing, and when I learned of his passing, I did light a candle for any remaining family members of his that are kind of mourning his passing. I wanted to send them nothing but good vibes. So I did light a candle or two and sent the good energy to them. The other person I lit a candle for was Brian Last when I heard that he was ill. I want to send some good vibes to you, Brian, and Jim Cornette, of course. You know, you guys, I listen to your podcast all the time, and you guys do make me laugh. So, especially when some of the things that Jim just comes up with, it's just so funny. Like, Jim Cornette just brings out this, you know, this funny business, and I was just like, wow, that's really great. And there's a lot of stuff. I do kind of catch Dutch Mantel's podcast, Kevin Nash's. I know he had talked about Curt for a little bit. Just such admiration for, you know, Curt Hennig that a lot of older wrestlers will tell you, especially Kevin Nash. But this is about Lanny Poffo. So I'm going to take a little break. Come on back with me and we'll talk more about Curt. Okay, and we're back. So yes, we did talk briefly a little bit about Lanny Poffo. Like I said, I am very sorry to hear about his passing. I think if Curt were here, he would say he was very sorry also to hear of Lanny's passing, and that him and Lanny weren't exactly close, but they did, you know, hang out together, and you know, they were together for, I think, almost a year as a manager, you know, and wrestler. So, but going back to, you know, saying the things about Curt that, you know, made us want to watch wrestling, anytime I watch Curt, it's like, wow, you know, it's like, oh, I never saw that move before. And then I just love it how he would like, where'd you get this guy from? Now you made me mad. And then he would get up into the ring and like, you made me mad. I could just see myself if I were a little bit older in that time, because I was about 2 or 3 years old when he would do that. I think if I were a little older, I think I would have been rolling on the floor laughing. Of course, you hear all these stories about all the ribs that Curt pulled. Like I said, I do catch Kevin Nash's podcast. It's called Click This, I think it's called. And Dutch Mantel, of course, the story of with Dutch Mantel. And then I do also try to catch on YouTube Jeff Jarrett's podcast. I didn't really like Jeff Jarrett. I don't know really who Dutch Mantel was, but I can tell you, recently, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago, maybe a few weeks ago, about a month, I think I had caught on Jeff Jarrett's podcast, Jeff talking about, you know, how Curt really wasn't into TNA in 2002, and then in 2003, he kind of wasn't there. But his last match, he kind of wasn't into it. And you could tell, and you can look this up on YouTube, just look at Curt's eyes in TNA, and when he does that last match with David Flair, who has, like, disappeared altogether from wrestling. Does anyone know where David Flair went to? I just know the woman who played Daphne, who was like his sidekick in WCW, I just hated her. and I can tell you why I hated her. I hated her because she would scream, and that was a pet peeve of mine. I hate when people scream, like, especially like right in my ear or right near my ear. Every time she would come out, I would turn WCW off, because at that point it was kind of like, okay, enough screaming there, dearie. No, we're not going to do that. So every time David Flair and Daphne would come out, I was just like, oh, I'm going to watch something else. But around that time, I think that was like 99, maybe even 2000. I think WCW was kind of making a transfer. So they were kind of, I don't know if they were reestablishing themselves, but I really do I really do think that they come out of themselves and kind of try to reinvent themselves. And I actually did catch an interview with Diamond Dallas Page, and trust me guys, I don't like Diamond Dallas Page. I never liked Diamond Dallas Page. I hated his wrestling. I hated his gimmicks. And when he went to WWF, I was just like, what the heck is this? He's a stalker now, and he's stalking The Undertaker's wife? This doesn't make any sense. I just didn't like the man, but I didn't like the wrestling man. But now that I've seen a couple of interviews with him, I often wonder, like, what Curt would think of him now. Because I do like hearing some of the stories that Dallas has. And I did that with Jeff Jarrett too. I hated Jeff Jarrett. I hated Jeff Jarrett with a passion. I would literally turn the channel when Jeff Jarrett was on, unless it was against Curt. Does that make any sense, guys? I guess it does, because, you know, like I said, I adored Curt's wrestling. But even if it was against, like, another second generation. So Jeff Jarrett was second generation. So was Curt. So was Brett. So was, you know, Greg the Hammer Valentine, which I found out recently he was second generation. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy cow. And I actually found out, Greg's real name. I thought it was Greg the whole time. So, in a sense, I guess, when I listen to these interviews, and especially when they talk about, you know, certain people, certain things, Diamond Dallas Page was talking about, you know, recently he was talking about Eric Bischoff, meeting Eric Bischoff, and he was talking about other things, about Hogan, and I think, you know, like I said, I'm starting to listen to the people that I really didn't like. I mean, Kevin Nash was okay, but, I hate to say this, because I really do like Kevin Nash, but when he called himself Big Sexy, I was just kind of like, no. I can't see Kevin Nash that way, I guess. Maybe he saw himself that way, but I was just like, no, to me, the only sexy guy was Curt. I thought Curt was sexy. I think Curt would agree with me. I'm sure he would agree with me. But I just think that how I perceived Curt was that his wrestling was phenomenal. And I'm starting, like, to finish what I was talking about, I'm just starting to realize that maybe I may have not have liked their character, but I do like, hearing interviews from them, such as Jeff Jarrett or Diamond Dallas Page. Even if I didn't like their gimmicks, like if Sting came out and had a podcast and was talking about Curt and stuff, which I don't think Sting really had anything to do with Curt, so he probably wouldn't talk very long, about Curt Hennig. But, I always look, Like when Mantell, when he had talked about Curt, he told the story of when he was in Puerto Rico and Curt got kicked out of Puerto Rico. Because apparently he was under the ring and there was something about the ring. Like he was under the ring and he had a sandwich and shit in a bucket. I really recommend it. So if you can, go over to YouTube and look up Dutch Mantell's podcast and look for Curt Hennig. It's there. I just think that was a really funny story, and I'm sure Curt would say it was taken out of context, you know. But the funny stories that I hear on some of these podcasts are phenomenal, and even when they do interviews with other wrestlers and they say, oh, Curt did all these ribs and blah, 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 I eat that up, and that's why I keep listening. I'm hoping that they, we'll talk more about Curt since his birthday is Tuesday. So to finish that up, and move on. So Curt's wrestling was just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. That's all I can say. All right. I'm going to take a little break. I'll be back with you in a minute. All right. And we're back. So to be honest, when it comes to, Curt's birthday coming around and the fact that I think we lost out on a huge opportunity to have the greatest wrestler to ever live kind of be around in this time frame. What would he think about the politics? What would he think about the world in general or even wrestling today? What would it be like to sit down and have a conversation with him? And for any of you spiritual people out there, if you believe that, that would be kind of cool to have a spiritual conversation with the man himself. But to me, like I said, because I was so young when he was sort of, I wouldn't say in his prime because I think he was always in his prime. But being, 4 years old and then he was Intercontinental Champion in the WWF and then, he went to WCW. And he caught me when I was, a teenager, in WCW. I was, 11, 12, and 13 when he was in the NWO and then he did the Rap is Crap. And I just think that watching him wrestle was a gift. Because in a sense, it's the reason I wanted to be a wrestler. Yes. Your sweet little podcast girl, Steph, wanted to be a girl wrestler, and who better to teach me how to do that than the man himself, Mr. Second Generation, Curt Hennig. Because the look and feel of how he would wrestle made me want to do that. I was like, oh, I want to do that. And so I idolized him for many, many years, along with Bret Hart. But I think Curt stood out to me more because it was just the way he would, it was the dramatic things he would do in that ring. And you're just like, oh, come on, what's the secret? Of course, if you've seen old interviews of Bret Hart and Curt, I am going back to like 1993 where he would say, we've been wrestling since we were this tall. And I'm like, duh. It's because your fathers were both wrestlers. It's just, for me, it set off a whole new thing. Like I wanted to be in wrestling. I could see myself, yes, even being a female, I could see myself going out there night after night and just, even if I had to wrestle Curt himself, he used to take, didn't matter who you were, didn't matter your skin color, didn't matter if you were a man or a woman, he would definitely wrestle you. Cause I remember I think it was 1999, he actually wrestled a black woman named Midnight. And he didn't care. He went right out there and just wrestled her just as he normally would. And made her look incredible. I've seen the match. But that was his style. He always wanted people to get a leg up in the business, and, you know, 'cause he was the business. You know, this was his life. It was his way of contributing to us all. And I really admired that in him. And even though I had some things about myself, you know, I didn't think I was pretty enough to go into wrestling. And there really wasn't a woman's division. I mean, they had women wrestlers like Jackie. She wrestled the Disco Inferno. And I honestly, I think she got shafted in that, because I think she should have been the champion. If you were going to let her win, you should have made her champion. But it's like, no, you can't hold a man's belt. I'm like, but there is no woman's belt. So exactly, I didn't understand it. I mean, why have the match anyway? You know, I guess I don't understand the whole rigmarole of why a woman couldn't have a man's belt, because they sort of did give China the belt. I think it was the European Championship, I believe. Somebody check me on that, but I'm pretty sure she had the IC belt. It was either Intercontinental Championship or the European Championship. I can't remember. But I mean, they let China have a man's belt. So this whole thing, and that was what, 1999, and that was 1997 when she faced the Disco Inferno. I'm talking about Jackie now. I think she really got shafted. I think they should have let her have the belt. I think it was a TV belt in WCW. I just really think they should have let her have that belt, because at the same time, Curt had the US belt. And honestly, I think Curt would have loved to have given it to a woman, wrestling them. 'Cause let's face it, he was just an all-around nice guy. He, you know, wrestled his heart out, and I just always felt like he got the raw end of the stick sometimes, because, you know, he should have been WWF champion. But then there was like, well, Hogan didn't want him to, you know, get there. He said, no, he's not in my league. No, he was beyond your league. Curt was beyond your league, because Hogan wasn't a second generation. He didn't know the business very well. And if you watch those, when he did face Hogan, if you watch those Hogan matches, I honestly think he was better than Hogan. Way better than Hogan. All right. I'm going to take a little break. I will see you on the other side. Okay, folks. Just to wrap this up, because I do have to go. My 6-year-old is here. So, but I just want you to kind of, you know, light a candle for Curt, you know, give him that love. And, today, just remember him, and if you can, you know, just love the ones that you're with, and don't take for granted, the love that you have for, you know, everyone, and just try to not take for granted, you know, because I think that, we all took for granted the greatest wrestler to ever live. I really wish he was here today. If he was, I mean, like I said, him and I would probably be good friends, and I would tell him how I want to thank him for everything he's done for me. He really turned me on to wrestling. I hope he did the same for you, and that's why you admire him as well. And I just want you to, you know, light a candle for him and remember him on his birthday. Maybe say out loud, you know, happy birthday, Curt. I'm saying it now. Happy birthday, Curt, wherever you are. I hope you have a wonderful birthday wherever you are, and we all miss you and wish you could really be with us right now. Oh boy, I'm getting emotional. So that's my exit time. If you would like to donate to this show, you can contact me at mrperfectisperfect0328@gmail.com, and I will give you my handle for PayPal if you'd like to donate, or if you'd like to contact me and just say, hey, I like the show. I love the show. I would like to donate to you some other way. I will be more than willing to work with you. If you love what you hear and you want to hear more, like I said, Mr. Perfect is Perfect 0328@gmail.com. Go ahead and donate today, because, I don't know how long this is going to go for, but I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. I can't say enough how much emotional I get, about Curt, but also about, all of you listening right now from wherever you are, Spain, Bulgaria, Russia, UK, Germany. I'm just overwhelmed by everyone who has decided to listen to me talk about the greatest wrestler to ever live. Thank you, and you're more than welcome to contact me. I'll give you my email address one more time. It is mrperfectisperfect0328@gmail.com, and like I said, you can donate money to me, and you can say how much you love the show. I will even translate the German for you if you send me an email in German. Just thank you. I'm totally overwhelmed by everybody. And like I said, you're going to hear this on Tuesday, on Curt's birthday. I record this a little early, but just light a candle for him and just spend the day and remember the greatest wrestler to ever live. All right, everyone. Remember, nobody beats Mr. Perfect. Nobody.